In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I bear witness there's no God but God, and Prophet Muhammad is a slave and messenger, and I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan. So, in this video, I'll be talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor. What happened? We're going to break this down. We're going to take a deep dive spiritually into this situation. We're going to take a deep Quranic analysis of what happened. So I got some Quranic verses here for you to get real in-depth, real deep into truth, into knowledge here. So let's get into it. So for me personally, I've got some MMA experience. I got about 4 years roughly in Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience. So I know a little bit about MMA and the UFC. I've been watching UFC since the beginning. So I'm quite aware of it. Also, I've been a practicing Muslim for about 4.5 years now. I chose to be a Muslim about 4.5 years ago. I've got thousands of hours of study in the Quran. And I've been always a seeker of knowledge since I was a young kid. So I've got a lot of spiritual knowledge that I've honed over the years. So, and I wasn't raised Muslim. I was raised Catholic, so I don't have the traditional dogma or wrong beliefs about Islam. So I came to Islam with a clean slate, open eyes, open heart, an open mind to really understand this knowledge on a pure level. So I'm coming at this from a purist point of view, from the Islamic point of view, to take a real deep dive into what happened with Khabib and Conor and understand this from a divine law perspective. So if you want to know more about divine law, you can listen to more of my previous videos, but in this one I'm just going to give a deep overview just to give us the basis understanding of what divine law is, there's free will, there's cause and effect, there's all these divine laws. So I'm just going to brush onto it just to give you a somewhat of an understanding for this video. Allah says in Quran chapter 6 verse 38, there is no terrestrial creature that crawls in the earth, nor a bird that flies with its 2 wings, but they are creatures like you, all subject to the divine laws. We have neglected nothing in this perfect book of law, then to their Lord shall they all be gathered. So basically what Allah is saying is that all the creepy crawly creatures, all the flying ones, everything in between, we're all subject to these divine laws. These divine laws are universal. They exist throughout the universe and also in the multiverse. And they're also eternal. They've always existed, and they're immutable. They cannot be changed. So, just as as something a little bit different to help you understand this, you look at man's law, which is not divine law. So, man's law is legislation. I don't even want to call it law because it's not. It's man's policy. If it's aligned with divine law, then it's right. And if it's not, then it's immoral and wrong. So a lot of our legislation in this day and age is wrong, and it's not aligned with divine law. So man's law can never be eternal because it can only exist when that human being is alive, and as long as they follow that legislation. So most legislation has been around for a few decades, and they slowly disappear and change over time or whatever. So obviously it's changeable. The legislators can change their laws their own whims. If they can make more money making up a law that transgresses people, well, they'll go right ahead and make it. So if they want to make what a law makes lawful unlawful, well, there's severe punishment for that. So man's law is not universal. It only exists in a certain jurisdiction. It's not eternal, and it's not immutable. It can always be changed. So we have to understand these divine laws. That's all I'm really trying to say. And the reason why you want to not make what Allah makes lawful, you don't want to play God like these legislators do. This is what Allah says in Quran chapter 17 verse 39. These teachings are part of the wisdom which your Lord has revealed to you. And the basis of all these acts of righteousness is that you set up no other God besides Allah, lest you be cast into hellfire, condemned, rejected. So, you want to be condemned, rejected? Then play God. Associate partners with Allah. Make what Allah makes lawful unlawful. Do that. You're going to burn. You're going to burn, baby. And you're going to burn for ages. There's no cool drink in Hellfire. You're gonna burn until all your maladies and impurities are burned out of you, so you can actually be a good soul. So this happens for ages. You don't want to go to hellfire. It's a severe punishment, and that's just a warning to all those legislators out there that are playing God. There's cause and effect. So that leads me into the law of cause and effect, which was very important to understand in the Khabib Conor situation. So Allah says in chapter 95, verse 5, then according to our law of cause and consequence, we degrade him to the lowest of the low if he does evil deeds. So if you do good, Allah will reward you good. If you do bad, Allah will lower you and degrade you and bring you to the lowest of the low. So in the situation in Conor McGregor and Khabib, Conor was consistently backbiting, consistently talking bad about Khabib, about his politics, about his country, his family, his religion, beating that down. He was constantly backbiting Khabib. We know in Islam backbiting is a very big sin. So it's a very negative thing to do. So Conor was lowering himself lower to the low. Now, Khabib, on the other hand, was being patient. He was overlooking Conor's faults. He was keeping himself reserved. He had some retaliatory comments, but he was very mild in doing so. He was held his composure and maintained his his composure very well. And he was a great example for all Muslims and non-Muslims alike. He carried himself very well leading up to that fight. So if you do good, if you're on a higher moral level, your chance for success increases a great deal. And if you do negative deeds, well, your chance of success drops considerably. So I believe going into the fight, Khabib had the moral high ground, and he had a higher chance of winning due to his level and closeness with Allah, the unique creator of all that exists, because he was doing more good deeds. I believe he was praying 5 times a day. He did Hajj earlier in that year. His dealings with Conor McGregor was showing great character and great moral resolve, and at a higher level. So as we can see, the results of the fight, Conor was degraded even lower to low because he continued on his immorality. He continued on his negativity. And he was even promoting alcohol through the press conferences and whatnot, and during the fight. And you don't have to be a Muslim to know that alcohol is bad for you. If any healthy person out there will know that alcohol is bad for you. It's not rocket science. So that was leading up to the fight. So I believe a big factor to Khabib winning this fight, because Conor's a very good fighter. And he's one of the best guys in the world for sure. And to beat him, you got to be on your top game. And Khabib was on his top game, and he was on his top moral game as well, leading into the fight. So we're gonna look at after the fight what happened. So Khabib won the fight pretty convincingly. I believe he may have lost the 3rd round, but it was very close, and he basically dominated the other 3 rounds and submitted Khabib in the 4th. Submitted Conor in the 4th. And I believe during the fight and after the fight, a cornerman of Conor McGregor named Danis is his jiu-jitsu coach, and he was, from I understand from the testimony of people that were there, that he was making religious innuendos to Khabib, putting his religion down, and probably saying some other nasty stuff that I probably don't want to hear anyway, to Khabib. So this was probably during the fight. I know for sure after the fight, Danis was talking smack to Khabib. So Khabib took that to heart, and he was overly charged. He still had a lot of adrenaline. He was just in fight mode. He just came out of a huge fight, a huge adrenaline dump, what he just achieved, and he just kept on going. He didn't shut. I guess he didn't get that dump, but he just kept on going. He was so charged, and he flew over the fence and jumped and attacked Danis physically, and that was broken up pretty quickly. I think there's a few shots fired on both sides. Not much damage done. And in the cage at the same time, simultaneously, we got Conor trying to jump out of the cage to get at Khabib, and then the security guards holding back Conor. And so Conor, I believe Conor's brother's trying to get out of the cage at the same time, and Conor suckers him. He throws the first punch, and so Khabib's brother retaliates, throwing a few strikes back, and then a few other guys on Khabib's team jump in the ring and have their turn trying to throw shots at Conor. Conor defended himself pretty good in those situations. So this is the crux of the situation. This is the big talk of the town, with Khabib flying over the fence and the shenanigans and the melee that happened. Okay, so what was the right action? Like, first of all, did Khabib and Conor do the right thing? And on top of that, what would be the proper thing? So how to deal in that situation? We're gonna need to look at the Quran and how Allah says how to deal with these situations. So we know for ourselves and also for the fighters to help reform them and people watching, and obviously including myself. So to help improve our character. So Allah says in the Quran in chapter 5 verse 45, and therein we laid down the following law for them, the Jews. So this is to the Jews, to Moses, who was their prophet, messenger and prophet at the time, revealing through the Torah the law to the Jews. Life for life, eye for eye, nose for nose, ear for ear, and tooth for tooth, and for other injuries, and equitable retaliation. So if you're going to retaliate, it has to be equitable. This is what is lawful with the law. And I have another verse. I'm going to talk about that in more depth soon. So Khabib was verbally attacked by Dylan Danis. So Khabib had the right to verbally attack Dylan Danis back through the law of equitable retaliation. So Khabib went overboard. He was the oppressor now, because now he's flying in physically, trying to do physical damage to Dylan Danis for the things that he said. So now Khabib's the oppressor in that situation. And, he could cause other damage to people around him, to fans or whatever. But I think that was the area of Conor's team, so I don't think there was any chance of injuring other people in that situation. So if we look at Conor's situation, did Conor deal in an equitable way in his retaliation? So nobody hit Conor, nobody was saying anything verbally to Conor, but Conor was the first one to throw a strike at Khabib's brother as he was trying to go over the cage to help Khabib. So obviously he was overstepped his bounds in retaliating, because his team was being attacked, but no one was retaliating on him. So I guess he had a right to help protect his team, but nobody was actually physically hurting him or verbalizing anything to him in a negative way, that what I've seen in the footage. So he was an aggressor and oppressor on that. So then after that, Khabib's team saw that, and two of members of Khabib's team came in the ring and threw some extra shots on Conor, and that created a little bit of a melee. But alhamdulillah, the police and security broke that up, and harmony and balance were maintained shortly after. So what would be the right thing for Khabib to do in this situation, or Conor to do? So obviously both Conor and Khabib are out of line in that situation. So Allah says in chapter 16, verse 126, believers, if you have to punish the oppressors, then punish them to the extent you have been persecuted, which is basically eye for an eye. But if you endure patiently, remember it is far better for the patiently persevering. So patience and overlooking people's faults, which Allah loves. Allah loves the patient. Allah loves the ones who overlooks people's faults. Allah loves those who forgive. So it's far better to be patiently persevering. So if Khabib in that moment, and he's a human being, he's got lots of things go flying through, his mind, his energy, like it's a huge day in his life. Um, you know, he went overboard, and the best thing would have been for him was to be patiently persevering, and through the law of cause and effect, he would have raised his rank even higher by illustrating such a high moral character in that situation. So Khabib would have been at a higher level if he would have maintained that level, and same with Conor. If he would have stayed patient and not retaliated whatsoever, he would also have been his rank would have been raised. But obviously, they both didn't raise their rank in that situation, but lowered it, and that's why all the negative press and negative things have been talked about that situation. So. Another important thing that led up to the fight that I wanted to mention afterwards about retaliation, it kind of all started with Artem Lobov, which is another UFC fighter, and he said some smack on a YouTube video about Khabib, and Khabib didn't like that, so Khabib confronted him I think in somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where it was, but there's video footage of it, where Khabib confronts him about that. Now, in equitable retaliation, Khabib has 100% lawful right in divine law, in God's law, the only law that matters, to verbally defend himself against Lobov in that situation. He has equitable retaliation, but Khabib slightly took it over because he kind of gave him like a slap in the back of the neck like that, maybe a little bit hard or just a little bit of a push. It wasn't too much, but that's a little bit overboard. That's a little bit going. That's not being equitable in your retaliation. That's going above and beyond it or whatever. And Lobov actually stayed patient in that situation and overlooked Khabib's faults and didn't retaliate. So in that situation, Lobov rank was risen higher and Khabib was risen lower. So in the situation of the fight leading up to Conor McGregor and Khabib, Khabib's rank was higher. He was at a higher level, according to a law, through his moral behavior, and Conor was lower on a lower level, and he degraded him to the lower of the low, and got beat down in the fight, and was brought even lower because of his actions. Now, Conor, in another earth, in another timeline, another reality, if he played his cards a little bit differently, he would have had a better chance of winning that fight, or actually winning it. If he took the moral high ground, he would have had a better chance of winning that fight. So that and that involves anything in life. The more moral value you have, the higher morality character you have, the more success you'll have in this world, and more importantly in the next world. So this is to help reform character, to help bring about evolve people's consciousness and improve people's character and moral level. This is what it's all. This is what it's all about. This is what this is all about. So, what I really found interesting is that if you can look online, watch on YouTube, Putin and Khabib and his father having a little interview, a little discussion, and I was really impressed with what Vladimir Putin said. He basically told Khabib, be respectful. Be sportsmanlike. It's sports. We can learn a lot from sports. Basically, what I said in the fighting, like people can learn from fighting. It's good for you. These situations you can learn from, even though they may be hard. Training's hard and whatnot. So he said like a lot of good things to Khabib, and I was really impressed with that. So I recommend checking out that video. I wonder if he watches my videos. He basically said like maintain the law of harmony and balance. So I'll just mention this verse really quickly, Quran 55:7-9. And he raised the heavens high and set up the law of harmony and balance. He explains this to you, that you should not violate the law of harmony and balance. Hold balance with justice, giving everyone his due, avoiding extremes, and do not disturb the law of harmony in the least. So basically, Putin was telling him, don't violate the law of harmony and balance, in my own words, that's not what he said, and be respectable and whatnot. So check out that video. I was pretty impressed with Putin, if you haven't already. May Allah be with you. May Allah protect believers. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. More to come, inshallah. Thank you.